Alright, on Monday morning, I weigh in, and all my weights are taken is what I call a true weight. It's a dry weight. It's when you get up, you've pissed, shit, whatever. You haven't eaten, you haven't drank anything yet, and that's where you're going to get your true weight. So my Monday morning weight, of course, Sunday morning before I loaded was 198. Excuse me, 198 on the dot. Monday morning after the load, I'm 206.5, which is looking back. I'm going to go back and I'm going to recheck the numbers for the last several weeks to see if the patterns are still there and if the numbers are predictable and where they're supposed to be, and of course they are. 206.5 is about a pound and a half actually under what I normally am the last couple weeks after a load. So I questioned, of course, right away, did I hit it hard enough? Oh, I hit it hard. I was good. I got the good load, I got it in, I and my normal water intake. So there's no variables off the top of my head that would have kept me from hitting the higher number, pound and a half, other than the fact that I'm just a little leaner this week than I was last week. And a pound and a half is always good, especially when you're coming into the last week. So 206.5 on Monday morning. Schedule of things for Monday, pretty simple, pretty predictable. I'm gonna tan. I'm gonna get a tanning session in. Monday and Wednesday will be my last tanning sessions for the week, and of course I'm dark enough anyway as it is. It's more doing it out of routine than it is anything else. The color, I could go the whole week without tanning and be just fine. Now my training is only going to be upper body today, and to touch on my training a little bit and explain as best I can how this training goes the last week, it's quite a bit different than my regular training. My regular training to this point is still heavy. It's still hard. The training that you're going to see in my training footage is very similar to what I do right up until 1 week out. It's always been said, you dance with the one that brought you. You train the same way that you train in the off season to get the size that you do when you're dieting. Yes, you have to take into consideration things like aches and pains, restricted calories, whether you're feeling good that day. It's not always great to be, during a contest prep, especially 2 or 3 weeks out, trying to, beat the logbook, so to speak, or beat your numbers. At that point, it's not a growth game. It's not a progression game. It's a maintenance game. And you also have to be smart in the sense that, if you're squatting and your lower back is tight and your knee bothers you or something, those things need to be taken into consideration. And changes need to be made to your training to accommodate those aches and pains that you're going to come up with throughout the course of a prep. Okay? There should be no record-setting strength lifts at 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks out from a show. It just shouldn't be happening. If they happen on accident and you happen to be growing and you got a couple more reps here, you got 20 pounds here, that's great. More power to you. Speaking for myself, because this is the me show right now, I don't make those types of strength gains. In fact, I probably lose a little bit more strength than most of my average clients do, average amount of clients. I tend to fall off in strength about the last 6, 7 weeks. It's always been like that. It always will. I don't see that changing anytime soon unless I'm going to give up condition and not get as lean as what I'm used to getting for the shows that I prepare for. So when I go in to do my upper body on Monday, I'm also going to come back and hit, just to give you a heads up on the schedule, I'm going to hit my upper body on Monday. I'm going to hit my legs for the last time on Tuesday. I'm going to come back to upper body on Wednesday morning. But these 3 workouts are not going to be heavy. They're not going to be intense. Essentially, I'm going in with this mindset. I'm going to go in and I'm going to stretch and squeeze. I'm going to pose with the weights. I'm going to get a good pump. I'm not going to go anywhere near failure, and I'm damn sure not going to train heavy. The only thing I have to gain from training heavy the last week before a show is an injury that'll keep me off stage on Saturday. That is the last thing that you want. It's the last thing you need. I will gain nothing by training my ass off and training hard and heavy less than 1 week before a show. I'm going to go in, I'm going to use my muscles basically. I'm going to train with a very solid form, very tight, maybe even slow motion type training. I'm going to get a good pump. I'm going to think stretch and squeeze the entire time. I'm going to do what I call fluff. I'm going to put some fluff in there. I'm going to pull out a squat and I'm going to put in an alternating leg extension, or I'm going to put in a one-legged lunge. I'm going to put in pec deck flies for more sets than I otherwise would to pre-exhaust, things of that nature. I'm going to do nice and slow stretch and squeeze tricep press downs. My side laterals are going to be very controlled. I'm not going to be trying to move a lot of weight. and I'm just going to kind of burn my side delts, that sort of thing, with some slower, more deliberate, I guess you could say, repetitions. Going to get a pump? That's it. I'm not going to lower my volume a whole lot. It's going to be a little lower, but I'm not going to take it down to only 2, 3, 4 sets. As an example for chest, I might do 9 sets, not counting, one warm-up, something like that. But I'm going to do them in the 7, 8, 9, 10 rep range. Again, I'm not going to count reps. I want feel. I want to go by what feels good, and all I want to do is feel that muscle nice and smooth, stretching and squeezing. That's all I want. When I'm done, I got a good pump. I think, okay, cool. I'm not in there to deplete. Quite frankly, I'm already depleted. Plus, I loaded on Sunday. I don't want to deplete a whole lot. I just want to use the muscles. I want to keep them full. It's my opinion that if you go too long without training that last week, you will get some atrophy. And atrophy is damn sure not something that you want coming into the last week. So I'm going to use the muscles, get the pump, but not necessarily train hard and put myself at risk of an injury, pulling something, God forbid, end up with a bruise or something else. So I'm going to go through, my sequence is this: chest, shoulders, tris, because they haven't been trained in a week at this point. Haven't trained them since last Monday. Then I'm going to hit back, traps, buys, lower back, maybe a couple sets of abs. Okay, I'm going to move pretty quick. I'm not going to circuit train. I'm not going to huff and puff. But at the same time, I'm going to keep up pretty good pace because my training isn't going to be terribly demanding. Not going to be terribly heavy. Not going to be training to failure. The intensity isn't going to be through the roof. I'm just getting a nice pump. No need to take much longer, probably than 30 seconds in between sets. And that's a guess because I'm not going to time it. I don't get that OCD with training or that sort of, it doesn't matter whether it's 30 seconds or 45 seconds. I'm going to go with a pace that as quick as I can without huffing and puffing and without working myself into the ground. Workout takes about hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes. I'm not rushing, not taking my time. It just happens to take that long. When I'm done, I don't feel driven into the ground, but yet I feel like, okay, I got a good workout, use my muscles, I'm still a little pumped. When I'm done, I am going to get my post-workout carbs. It's not much. I'm taking in roughly 35, 40 grams of carbs with some protein. Certainly not a lot, but at the same time, hey, I trained. I'm going to use my post-workout carbs, and that's going to help me so that I don't go flat over the course of the next couple days, or as flat as I would without the carbs. You'll find here that I'm not very, very big on carbs at this point in the diet anyway. Outside of post-workout, I don't have any carbs in there, other than vegetables and things of that nature. And I don't count vegetables as carbs. So, obviously, again, I have no cardio. The cardio's done at this point. It finished up on Saturday. This last week before the prep, even though I normally function on 5 hours of sleep and I work late, I'm going to play it smart. I'm going to cut back my workload just a little bit. I'm going to get my work done a little earlier than I normally do. And I'm going to try to get in bed about 3 hours before I normally do. Get more rest. I'm going to get more sleep than I normally. Hey, even if I'm just laying there and I'm not sleeping, I'm not going to get up yet. I'm just resting. It's a good week as your volume cuts back. The cardio comes down, training intensity comes down. There's just generally less stress and less rushing around relative to 2 and 3 and 4 weeks out, that sort of thing, where you're just breaking your ass. You don't have enough energy. You feel like you got cement blocks that are attached to your feet while you're walking around all day. Get that extra rest. That way, it not only will help your condition and help your state of mind to actually enjoy the time before the show, leading up to the show, and the day of the show, but it also helps with your immune system because a lot of times, a lot of people are going to get sick coming off of a show because they have just beat their body up like essentially their body isn't used to. I've gotten very sick in the past from little things, from bronchitis even, and I say little again being relative, to bigger things like shingles. And I know most of you know that I've touched on the PHN, or post-herpetic neuralgia, which is essentially nerve pain that I've dealt with since 2003 after getting shingles after that show. If you have not witnessed something like that, I can explain it to you for the next 2 hours and you're still not going to get it. Just know that your immune system can be in the toilet if you beat your body up too bad coming off a show, and you can get sick with shit that you otherwise wouldn't get until you were 60 years old and had cancer. And when you do get them, something like shingles, you'll get it once and you'll understand that it's one of the worst things you could ever have to deal with. when in reality you can help yourself out by simply just pushing yourself to get more rest, laying around more, whether it's more sleep, but during the day just laying around more, taking your stress levels down, and just relaxing more. My supplements are still in. I'm doing protein powder. My Team Skip blend I trust immensely. I trust True Protein and the quality of their supplements. Outside of that, outside of True Protein supplements, yes, there are supplements out there that are still good quality. There's too many for me to keep track of. I can't run down and say this is good, this isn't good. All I'll say is when you use True Protein products and you're going to get on stage, the quality is there, and at least speaking for myself, I don't have to worry about whether it's going to negatively impact, if it's going to make me hold water or bloat me or distend. They're quality products that I've trusted in for many years, and I'm going to continue to, and they don't get in the way of my conditioning at all. I will run my protein powder, my Team Skip. Let's try that again. Team Skip protein powder all the way up till the day of the show. I always have. I have never had a regret, and there's no reason for me to change doing that this time either. Water, of course, is going to stay the same. During the last week, one of the things that and I'm going to continue to mention this throughout this chapter, is just consistency and predictability. The water is just another component, much like the food types, the food amounts, that needs to stay consistent every day throughout the last week of your prep. Again, when the variables are constant and things go right, you know what went right. When the variables are constant and something goes wrong, you know and can pinpoint much easier what went wrong and go back and fix it for your next show. So I'm going to keep my water intake the same, which is essentially it's going to be right around 9 liters. It may be a little bit more on my training day because I tend to not count the water that I'm taking in when I'm training. I feel like I'm in a sense just kind of replacing the water that I'm getting rid of, and respiration and things of that nature, sweating, by putting that water back in. However, keep in mind that, of course, my training for the last week of the show isn't terribly intense anyway, so I'm not sweating like I normally do. I sweat like a pig, quite frankly, when I'm training my ass off. But I'm not doing that type of training this last week, so I'm not going to be sweating like I normally do. So I'm not going to be as thirsty. I'm not going to be taking in as much water. I might take in 2 or 3 liters training the normal way that I'm going to take in maybe a liter, maybe a liter and a half with this training during the last week. So as far as my diet, I'll touch on my diet just a little bit. My diet, again, isn't going to change much unless I see some reason, some obvious reason I need to change it. At this point, for my final leg, I'm eating, for solid protein sources, I'm eating egg whites with chicken breast. My vegetable choice happens to be broccoli, which is in there as well. And for sodium, I tend to want to use, in this combination, mustard and soy sauce. It's a me thing. The sodium doesn't have to come from those sources. The protein doesn't have to come from those sources. It's what I'm comfortable with. I tend to like to use the eggs because it gives more volume and it fills me up. So I go with half egg whites, half chicken breast, and that fills me up so much more than if I were to go just with all chicken breast. So it's something that I changed it a couple weeks out when I started to get a little more hungry, and it's worked out very well. The protein powder, of course, is still in there. I prefer natural peanut butter for a fat source with my protein powder. So anytime I have a protein drink, my fat source with it is going to be natural peanut butter. It's a nice little side effect that it quite frankly tastes like dessert. If you have a Java Mocha iced protein drink from True Protein with my Team Skip blend, to me, when you're dieting hard and you're a couple weeks out from a show, it tastes like a Starbucks Frappuccino. It is dessert, and if you put a little bit of peanut butter in your mouth afterwards, the combination is really a psychological lifesaver. Certainly, I could stumble through if I had to. If it would benefit me to use a different fat source, I certainly would. But again, I've used that combination for so long; it's worked out very well for me, and I'm going to continue to do that. Some of the other things I throw in, even though it's the last week and I'm not training terribly hard, I'm going to keep my as much my post-workout, but my intra-workout supplements the same. I use Augment. I'm going to use it even on my lighter training days. If I cruise during a prep or even in the off season, I still use the same supplementation. I'm going to use my BCAA powder. I'm not going to change. If I'm training, even if I'm training light, if I'm training, my training nutrition remains the same. So that's all in my workout water. I still am using a couple servings of green tea a day. I still like my Crystal Light for my last meal of the day. I'm not going to change that the final week. Some people would say, well, you need to go to bottled water, you need to take out your Crystal Light. You know what? You go ahead and make the changes you want to make. I've been doing this for a long time, and speaking for myself, again, it's a constant. I've been doing this throughout the last 12 weeks or 18 weeks, depending on how long my diet is. I'm not going to change it the last week when the results are going to be so predictable that I know what's going to happen. If I start changing these minor, subtle things, whether I think they can help or they won't help, then I have a different outcome, and I don't know what the hell caused it. I don't know. Maybe it had something to do. Maybe I wasn't as hard because I took out sodium here, or I took out Crystal Light there, or I took out green. There's no good reason for me to take it out. My condition was incredible last weekend. All I need to do is fine tune and dial it in this weekend. The less changes that people make, and this is just my experience and what I've found, the less things you change and fuck with during the last week, the better off you're going to be when it comes time to hit the stage as far as your conditioning and being able to predict that you were going to hit the stage looking a certain way. Also take into consideration the predictability of having to make a weight class. You start messing with fluid intake, even a little bit, subtle changes. You start messing with Crystal Light versus bottled water versus distilled water. You're going to get into an area that you can't predict what your weight is going to do and what your condition is going to do. You might get it right. You may change 100 things and get it right. But what happens when it comes time to get back on stage again and you don't know what the hell you did because you changed so many things? I can guarantee you change a lot of things and you go and do that same plan, it isn't going to work exactly the same way next time, and you won't know what worked and what didn't. Not a good idea. Keep the variables as low as possible, keep them as constant as possible, and it's going to be very easy or much easier to tell what worked and what didn't.